My name's Serena,
And I'm Akshay.
and in this episode of Crash Course, we're going to be talking about foot binding. Akshay, did you know foot binding was used in ancient China and started in 1900s and was only used on women, and it left their feet tortured, broken, and pretty much useless?
While that fact is 98% correct, did you know it also left them deformed?
Foot binding started in the Southern Tang Dynasty under the rule of Li Yu. He wanted all women to bind their feet because he had an escort who had beautiful feet that were all wrapped up, and he thought that this was a major sign of attraction. He wanted all women to have small feet like she did, so he thought that binding them would be a great idea for all women everywhere.
Fun fact, did you know she wrapped her feet to make temporary ballet shoes?
I didn't, but now I do. Thanks. Foot binding started in 1900s, but was not outlawed until 1912. That is 1,012 years of foot binding. But most people kept on foot binding until the 1950s just because it was like what they were used to.
Many women wrapped their feet. The women who worked in the fields were not allowed to. How crazy is that?
Why weren't they allowed to, Akshay?
Because their legs and their arms were so important to their field of work. If they wrap their feet, they lose half their body and then they can't work.
Get it? Field of work? Because they worked in the fields?
Intended pun. So Serena, you're telling me it's so painful and it ruins your feet. Why do these women keep doing it?
Well, in China, it was a major sign of beauty and belonging to the upper class. It totally made you look cool. Akshay,
Yeah.
what's a golden lotus?
Great question, Serena. A golden lotus was a foot that was perfectly 3 inches in length. It was called the golden lotus because this was the perfect length and everyone desired their foot to be this long.
So, Akshay, there's a golden lotus. Does this mean that there's also a silver lotus?
Good question, Serena.
Thank you.
A golden lotus, as said before, is a foot that is 3.5 inches in length. A silver lotus is anything longer than 3.5 inches, not shorter, just longer. That's
Wow.
deemed unattractive in society.
Foot binding had many bad effects on the foot. Because of the unevenness between feet and body and the pain, women had to walk around on their heels.
It's a solid fact, Serena. You mind if I tell you one too?
Of course not, Akshay. I always love your facts.
Thanks. Women who had foot bindings squished their feet in a sense by tightly wrapping them, and this was very painful, and they had to walk in very small and fast steps. And this
That
was often
sounds awful.
It was. It was often called a tottering gait, and because the feet were squished, ingrown toenails could happen. Since they couldn't clean the dirt off their feet, they could get infections, and oftentimes, like, your feet would get cut up, and like everything would just ooze out everywhere. It's not a pleasant sight.
Gross. Having an infection in your foot was very hard to get rid of. There were so many folds in the feet that they couldn't clean them of bacteria. This caused the feet to be very smelly and disgusting and have tons of discharge. So most women of the higher class never took off their shoes because they didn't want people to see their gross feet. Foot binding started when the girls were 4 to 7 years old. It started early because their feet were really small and the bones were really easy to crush up. Before the foot binding started, their feet were soaked in hot water to get all the dead skin off and make them very warm and loose.
Now, all the dead skin that accumulated from the hot water had to be scrubbed off, and the toenails were cut as short as possible. Now that the foot was cleansed, it's time to wrap. Cotton bandages were soaked in hot water and then tightly wrapped around the foot. As they dried, they would shrink in size and apply a lot of pressure to the foot. After this, every single toe was broken and folded underneath the foot. Very, very painful procedure, and oftentimes many of the elderly women would have to sit with the child to help them through the pain. Did you know that even after the toes were broken, they'd have to break the arch of their foot to ensure the bone would not grow?
I didn't know, but now I do. Akshay, are we done yet?
Almost, Serena. Now that the foot was wrapped in cotton and it's been pressurized, it had to be sewn together, and this was for two main reasons. The first one was to ensure tightness on the bandage so it would not open during the child's lifetime. And the second was a bit more brutal. It was to ensure that the child could not rip the bandage off from the pain from the bindings. Foot binding was a fashion trend that occurred between 1900 and 1950.
It involved breaking and binding the feet of young girls to ensure that they would not grow and stay small forever. Foot binding was a gruesome fashion trend that led to women being mostly homebound and relying on their families for support. Crash Course History.
For all your old-time mysteries.
Logging off. See ya. No, it started in the 900s. It literally went on for 1,000 years.
Literally 1,000.
Foot binding started in 1900s, but was not outlawed until 1912. That is 1,012 years of foot binding. I'm gonna pee myself. Oh, I told you I should have peed earlier.
Why you keep laughing?
I don't know. Okay, reset.
No.
LeBron James. I'm sorry, go.
Okay.
To cut out every single part of this that I look stupid in. I am not letting you show this to the class without me seeing it and making
Okay.
sure I don't look stupid.
All right.